Thank you. Thank you. You're very kind. Very kind. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, how about that? Good evening, Prague. It's great to be here. Do you know, I'm here today in Prague for a reason that in politics is really very rare, even unusual. I've been in and around career politicians now for 20 years in the European Parliament. And what I'm talking about are people who go straight into politics from university and intend to spend the rest of their lives there. What matters to them is getting re-elected. What matters to them is their career in politics. And that matters far more than principle. It matters far more than doing what is right for your country. And I've spent 20 years working with these ghastly people. Thank you. Thank you. They think the same about me, so that's okay. But the reason I'm here today is I'm here in your great country to support somebody who has actually done a brave, decent and principled thing. Petra Macha is a very bright, competent guy who could, if he'd chosen, have stuck with one of the mainstream political parties to get a career. But he's chosen not to do that. He's chosen to stand up on principle as somebody that believes that the nation state is the essential and correct building block in which people all over the world wish to live. And I admire Peter for standing up and doing that. But even more, having battled against the odds, having beaten the opinion polls, having surprised everybody, he got himself elected to the European Parliament. He got himself onto what many would see as that great gravy train. You know, it's a good salary, good pension, great lunches, endless drinks receptions. There's some bits of it I quite like, you know, but he's actually, on a matter of principle, given that up, stood down as an MEP, walked away from all that privilege and taken the risk with absolutely no guarantee of success to put himself forward for the national elections in this country at the head of the Free Citizens Party. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise you that in my long years of doing politics, I've met few people with the guts, courage, and moral courage to stand up and do what Petra Macha has done, and that is why I'm here in Prague today, and I am 100% behind you. I really am. And the politics that Petra Macha represents is the politics of the future. Just look at what happened in 2016. In June, we had an event called Brexit. And then later on in the year, we had an event that I think horrified the global political class even more than Brexit. We had the election of one Donald J. Trump. These events were not of their own. These events were part of the same trend. These events were a reaction to an attempt by big multinational business, by big global banks, by big politics to do away with the concept of nation-state democracy and to replace it with new supranational structures, to build what I would say, frankly, are false gods. Sure, there are some people who want to have a European flag. I understand there were 6 of them outside the hall tonight protesting. All I can say is, Prague, if the best you can do is produce 6 protesters for me, something's gone wrong somewhere. I'm using more of that. But it is the politics of the future. And there are 2 big events, I think, which prove why this is right. The first is Brexit. You know, everybody said it was impossible. Everybody said it was nothing more than a pipe dream. All the established political parties said we should vote to remain. All the business organisations said we should vote to remain. All the trade unionists said we should vote to remain. Substantial chunks of our media said we should vote to remain. And leaders came from across the world. Even Obama came to Britain to tell us we must vote to remain. And I was told all the way through that we were whistling in the wind, that it would never, ever happen. But folks, on June the 23rd, 2016, it did happen, and we voted not against Europe, not against the European peoples, not against the nation states, not against the concept of trade, cooperation, reciprocity, being friends, being neighbours, working together. We didn't vote against that. What we voted against is what has been built in the name of the peoples of Europe in Brussels. Namely, we voted to leave an artificial political union based in Brussels, run by a bunch of unelected old men who act in their interests and not in ours. That's why we voted Brexit. Doing so, something fundamental changes. Because you can go back 25 years, you can see the Danes voting no to the Maastricht Treaty in a referendum, but being forced to vote again. You can see the Irish twice voting against European treaties, but being browbeaten in second referendums to produce the right result. You can see the French voting to reject the EU constitution. The Dutch, who followed them a few years later, simply to be ignored and for the whole thing to be rebranded as the Lisbon Treaty without a single power being given up. And all the way through, I've met people in my travels across the continent who said to me, but Nigel, it's all well and good wanting to have a different Europe. It's all well and good campaigning for a Europe of democratic nation states, but I'm afraid you've lost. I'm afraid it is inevitable that the big businesses and the big bureaucrats are going to get their way, and there will be, ultimately, one state of Europe. People thought, even if they didn't want it, they thought that it was inevitable. What Brexit has done is to blow the myth of inevitability out of the window. What Brexit shows is that if free people are prepared to stand up for their own rights and their own identity, they can beat the establishment. It can be done. Brexit would be that perhaps they'd get together in Brussels, you know, perhaps at one of Mr. Juncker's long lunches, and perhaps they'd get together and they'd say, well, unless we're careful, other countries might want the same. So why don't we give back a degree of autonomy, a degree of democracy to the individual member states? But oh no, that is not the lesson that they draw. And indeed, Mr. Juncker's speech last week is the second big reason why Peter's party represents the politics of the future. And it's this: Juncker stood up to make his State of the Union address, and what did he say? He said that we are going to have a European Union in the future that will have just one powerful president. It will have a finance minister who will be able to intervene directly in the affairs of the member states. He said that every member state must join the euro. He said that foreign policy, and by that I mean decisions as important as going to war, but foreign policy in the future, that no member state should be able to have a right of veto, and that by 2025, by that date, there would be a European army, a European air force, and a European navy. He could not have been clearer that he's building not even a United States of Europe, because this model would give the member states far less democracy and far fewer rights than, for example, a state in the USA. No, this is to be a centralised, controlled Europe, and perhaps even more sinister. He said that the EU would, in future elections, fund the campaigns of political parties, but that they would not put money into the coffers of anti-EU extremists. So if you support the project, you're lovely and fluffy and great, and you'll get loads of taxpayer money. But if you oppose the project, they'll do their damnedest to make sure that future European elections are not contested on a level playing field. What Juncker said and what he put forward was anathema. It was monstrous to anyone that believes in the free and fair principles of democracy. And what was the response that he got in the European Parliament? Well, not from me, but the rest of them. What did he get? A standing ovation. The right and the centre and the left rising in a standing ovation. That is the future of this European project. They couldn't care less what the individuals think. They are committed to making sure there will be no more referendums in the future after Brexit. Funny that, isn't it? So that is your future, folks. And if you wish to be a part of it, well, have a little think, perhaps, about one little area, one specimen of what has already been put upon you. Angela Merkel, when she said in 2015, based, I think, on guilt about Germany's past, more than rational thinking, Angela Merkel said, as many as come across the Mediterranean, we can cope with. And those of us that warned that it would be dangerous to do this, that most of those that were coming would never qualify anyway for refugee status, and that when ISIS said they would use this wave of people to get their own extremists onto the European mainland, none of those arguments hit home, and Merkel insisted on carrying on with this plan. And now it's meant that all the rest of you that are members of the European Union now have to pay for her mistake. And you, the Czech Republic, will have to take a quota, won't you?
Well, you jolly well will.
Because you're part of the European Union. And if you don't, they'll same to Poland, and they'll do the same to Slovakia, and they'll do the same, of course, in Hungary as well. So that's the plan. That's the plan. It's not your decision. It's the decision of the bosses in the middle. And I wonder, I'm getting heckled by youngsters. I'm not used to that. And I wonder whether there are some of you in this room of a certain age, middle-aged and older, who perhaps remember living through times like this in the past. It was known in the 1960s as the Brezhnev Doctrine of Limited Sovereignty. That the Soviets would decide how much of your lives you could control, and they would decide the rest of it. And that is the Europe that you are heading into. And I find it difficult to believe that anybody that has lived under those centralised, oppressive regimes could ever wish to head in this direction again. And I honestly think that it is time for people to make a stand. And just think for a moment about these Brexit negotiations. Now, I'm sure there are mixed feelings in this room about Brexit. Some of you will think, good on you, you've broken free. Others of you will think, how dare you, you've left us at the mercy of Merkel and Juncker and all the rest of them. And I do understand that point of view when I hear it. But just think about this from your own national perspective. The United Kingdom is your fourth or fifth most important trading partner in the world. You sell us more goods than we sell you. There are companies, there are workers in the Czech Republic that are very happy with a tariff-free deal that exists between you and between us. It is in your interests that we continue. Though we're leaving political union, it is in your interests that we continue to trade freely with each other. And you know, I know from my visits to Germany and elsewhere, when I talk to workers, when I talk to companies, that is what they want. But what's stopping that? What's stopping that common sense solution? What's stopping what would be the best financial outcome for you guys here in the Czech Republic? I'll tell you what's stopping it. What's stopping it is Brussels. What's stopping it is Juncker and Barnier and that Verhofstadt creature. That is what I knew what I was saying. That is what's stopping it. Because they actually, ask yourselves, who are they representing now? Are the European Commission and the bigwigs of Brussels, are they representing you? Are they representing your workers? Are they representing your country? Or are they now actually representing themselves? Representing one of the best careers and lifestyles and holidays and pay and perks packages. Oh, and by the way, the highest paid people in the European Commission pay 16% top rate tax. That's what they're defending. And the reason they're trying in these negotiations to be as unreasonable and as beastly as they possibly can to these nasty Brits is because they fear that if we get the common sense economic solution, other countries will want to do so. So I would put it to you that it's in your interests to have representatives in your national parliament who are going to make a noise about Czech companies, Czech business, Czech jobs, Czech national interest. And I would put it to you that because of the conflicts that now exist within this union, the East-West conflict on migrants, the North-South conflict that exists because of the euro. The fact that Brexit has happened. I put it to you that it makes sense to have representatives in your national parliament, not there solely to criticise the relationship with the European Union, but perhaps some people there who will lift their eyes and look to the horizon and start to talk and start to think and start to plan about what happens when this European Union, as it inevitably will, falls to pieces. You need people there with vision. And I have to tell you, I said this at the start and I want to say it again. I am not anti-European in any way at all. I want a Europe where we trade together. I want a Europe where we cooperate together. I want a Europe where we have reciprocity and we agree to deal with pollution that crosses borders and crime. But that Europe, that vision of free, democratic nations working and trading together can never happen. All the while, Juncker and this current system of government is in place in Brussels, and you have an opportunity. You have an opportunity. You have an opportunity to put somebody like Petra Macha with his colleagues into your parliament who is principled, decent, honest, patriotic, and has actually got the wit and the intelligence to understand that it's time to look to the future. The European Union is hopelessly out of date. It has never had